Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for our third and final session of this three-part series. Super excited to go through this with you guys. Before we get too stuck into the presentation, I think the first thing I wanted to do was just thank all of you guys for, being here throughout these three parts. We've really enjoyed hearing your stories. We've really enjoyed your company. And we've definitely really enjoyed your questions. You guys have asked some fantastic questions all the way through. So I just wanted to acknowledge that first before we got too stuck into it. Right. So before we cover today's material, I thought it would be good for us to start with a recap of what we've gone over, sort of the last couple sessions, just in case maybe everyone here hasn't been to all three before. And also, if you haven't been to all three, don't stress too much. They have been recorded and they will be published as well. So the first thing we'll go over was some pointers from our first presentation, Stand Out and Sell. So some of the things that we talked about on that day was, first, we want to make sure that we have the correct mindset. So we talked about how sometimes operators, we can get a little bit so stuck in to the technical aspects of our business. We can end up with this idea that if we're the best at what we do, that naturally people will just kind of come to us. But we explored how that wasn't really the case. And in fact, we don't necessarily need to be the best at what we do as much as we need to be the best selling. And at the end of the day, if our goal is to run a profitable business, we don't want to so much be the best as much as the best selling. We also talked about racking up rejections, how we would overcome the fear of rejections to understand that, behind every 100 no's, eventually you're going to get a yes from one customer, even if you got no from a lot of other ones.
And to remember that every time you get rejected, pat yourself on the back because that meant that you put yourself out there.
That's right. We also went through a few practical tips, exploring the importance of educating your prospective clients before they reach out. So by the time somebody reaches out to you, that they have, not only a clear idea of what you do, but the value behind it, so that you don't have to have, you can try and minimize, any pushback on price, especially. We also looked at the basics of how we would build systems around that, spoke in brief detail about the sales funnel. And then in our next session, Clarity That Sells, we explored in more detail what the sales funnel is. So from the first moment that a customer hears about us, how do we then, what stages does that prospective client need to go through to eventually become a paying customer? We also looked at the importance of having a clear offer, how to craft an elevator pitch, what it is, to make sure that what we're doing and our offer is coherent, it's simple to understand, and that we don't get so stuck into, in some sense, the fantasy around what we do and owning a business, and more focused on the very practical, the very real, what am I actually doing and trying to apply as a trade, as a good, as a service, and making sure that that's really clear, really simple, and really straightforward as to not confuse our clients. We talked about the importance of clear communication, why we want to make sure that we don't waste our customers' time, that we respect their mental bandwidth, that we try and keep communication, ideally, when I say to a minimum, because we want the customer to do more of the talking, because that gives us more information about what they want and what they need.
What's important to them.
Precisely. And also, we spoke about the importance of clear advertising to make sure that we keep it coherent and what coherent advertising actually looks like. So today, we've got another one. The vision that we want to sort of achieve today is, for us ordinary people, right? We're working with limited funds, little money. We're not, it doesn't grow on trees for us just yet. Our business hasn't fully taken off. So when working with those limited resources, how do we become known, trusted, and recommended in our local area? And the mission by which we want to achieve that is we want to build a local micro business that can outperform even bigger competitors simply by being more present, more human, and just generally more reliable. Reliability can be a rare thing, particularly if you live in a small town. Some businesses are just there because they've been there a long time. And it's easy to disrupt that market, even if you're a much smaller player, just by being more responsive and not taking your clients for granted.
Reliability makes or breaks a small business.
100%. So what are we covering today? First and foremost, we're going to be talking about how these local businesses actually get clients in the first place. We're then going to explore a really important concept called the lifetime value of a customer. We're also going to learn how to build our network, understanding things like word of mouth, local partnerships, and leveraging our existing relationships. And lastly, we're going to talk about the glue that holds it all together, which is the honesty and the reputation that we're known for. We need to understand that our reputation spreads, whether it's good or bad, and how to make sure that we are on the right side of that coin. So first and foremost, we'll talk about how local businesses actually get customers. So a lot of people tend to think, like we spoke a little bit about earlier, that customers will magically kind of find our business, right?
It's good enough, yeah.
Yeah, if it's good enough. But as we spoke about in the first session, that's not necessarily the case. The reality is that customers usually buy from the first person they think of, the person they trust, or if nothing else, the person they just keep seeing repeatedly. So we're going to talk about how we can be seen repeatedly. First and foremost, I want to stress and I want to stipulate a reminder, really important reminder, that if you have a low budget or even no budget to work with all this, that's fine. You don't need a huge budget to actually win locally. First and foremost, you just need a few basic things. It's visibility, trust, consistency. That's a really important one. Follow-up, probably the most important one. That has to do with our reliability. And we want good relationships. And we'll talk a little bit more about that further on the presentation. In terms of what are some low-cost strategies to actually implement those things, one that we're going to draw a lot of focus on today is repeat business. So that's the lifetime value of the client concept we spoke about earlier, and that we'll go into more detail soon. How to really leverage word of mouth to get a good result and grow our business. What kind of partnerships and referrals we're talking about, and also how to maintain a consistent social media presence. So, lifetime value of the customer. Let's start there. A lot of people will sometimes think about the one-off client, right? A lot of people will, if we're starting out and we haven't been in business for a long time, when we got our first few sales, we'll have that rush, that excitement, like we did it, and congratulations, that is a huge achievement. Let's say, whatever good or service you're offering, like let's say, your base package or offering, whatever is like $80. So when that first client comes in, we're going to think, sweet, I made $80. That's great. But the story doesn't actually have to end there, nor should it. Instead, we want to shift our mindset to remembering that actually this customer can be worth thousands over time.
And if a customer does end up coming back to you, you have to treat them really well. You have to really establish that relationship with them because they've shown that they are willing to be a repeat customer, and that's excellent for you because they already know you and they already like you. You don't have to actually find them again.
That's right. Although an emphasis on the part that they already like you, we also need to make sure, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, the honesty and the reputation of how we deal with that client in the first place. People are going to remember how they feel. So we'll talk about keeping your customers. Remember that repeat customers, they buy again. They refer others. That's that word of mouth thing we're going to focus on soon. They also leave reviews. Reviews are incredibly important in this day and age, especially in the Google context. The Google My Business profile is like the modern storefront. So that is far more important. Like if you had to pick between like TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of the platforms, and you were only going to be on one, making sure that you have a competent and coherent Google My Business profile is the most important one. And what helps boost that more than anything else is actually your reviews.
The biggest difference between a business that gets reviews and one that does not get reviews is asking for it. If you see a client with a smile on their face, say, I'm really glad that you appreciated my business. Please post a review for me. That would really help me. Because it doesn't occur to people unless you actually ask.
The other thing too is like, get them to do it then and there. Like there's no, if you just tell somebody like, hey, could you leave a review for us, please? Like, I mean, look, that's going to get you a much higher success rate than just not asking, right? And waiting for those reviews to happen on their own. If you try and do it that way, it's not really going to happen. But the other thing too, excuse me, is that in terms of getting them to offer the review then and there, I've seen some businesses do some pretty cool things about like, offering, like say it's a good or a service that you're offering, right? You don't even have to try and solicit a favorable review as such, but say, hey, look, if you leave a review, there's like a little gift that we can chuck in, just pop down whatever your experience was of dealing with us today. And as long as we can see that our review's been written, regardless of the condition, we want you to be honest. I'm happy to give you this, little bonus or little extra or whatever. There's different ways but you really do want to focus on trying to solicit that review from the moment you're closing your interaction. Why? Because if you've done a good job, your customer's happy, they already know you, they like you, and they trust you. And like we talked about in the first session, the importance of every customer being a fan, this is a way that you can get them to live that out. And that's a really important thing that benefits the both of you. And also remembering that keeping our clients, it becomes a stable source of income, right? Looking for one-off clients all the time, it does work. You can build a business off of that, but you're not going to build a very reliable and a very predictable business off of that compared to having, a very clear roster and a very clear customer base of people that are consistently going to offer you patronage and support. And remember too, that keeping customers is always easier than consistently trying to find new ones. Finding new clients is an expensive process. It can be either with your time or with resources through paid advertising. So let's talk about word of mouth. Remember that one happy customer can create a lot of future customers. This is so important. And the other thing too is that happy customers can refer us to other people, right? And this is something we've seen a lot with our business. So just treating people with respect, with kindness, with dignity, being excited that they're excited about working with us, right? And this is where that social media content to establish that parasocial relationship beforehand is so important. We'll go into a little more detail about that near the end. Ultimately, we want to make sure that people are so pleased with what we've done that they can't wait to tell other people about it. The other part of that, though, is a little bit of what we talked about earlier, which is that we want to be able to tell people clearly what it is that we do. So if we're able to articulate that for ourselves, our clients need to be just as capable and just as willing to do the same if we want to have a successful and functioning word of mouth referral system. So if people cannot clearly and easily explain what you do, they can't promote you. This is why we talked so much about the importance of the clarity of our offer in our second session. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit again today, because word of mouth basically, it's you make it or break it on one of two very important things. One of which is that people actually want to refer you. So we want to make sure that our clients have a good and positive interaction. And the other one is that people need to be able to clearly articulate and explain what it was that we did for them. So remember, stay memorable, give people a good experience that they'll remember, something a little bit unique, something a little bit, that sets us apart, and just make it as easy as possible for other people to recommend you. And this is where things like branding and business name and stuff are important, but they're also not the most important. At the end of the day, your elevator pitch is in some sense almost more important than your branding, because when you're trading on a name and face, that's like basically the start for you. And so you want to make it easy for people to recommend you and your service by virtue of its quality and how easy it is to communicate what you do. So let's talk about partnerships. One thing that I want to focus on today is that we don't want to forget our existing relationships. The people in our life that already know us and like us and are excited about what it is that we're doing, they can't support us if we don't know what we do. So it's not so much about like being arrogant or braggadocious, right? We want to communicate the excitement of what we're trying to do in a way that is going to be, appealing to the person we're communicating it to, right? So, one thing that we spoke a little bit about that came up in one of our sessions is sometimes, that crabs in a bucket mentality that people sometimes have. If you guys aren't familiar with the analogy, I'll quickly explain it. Effectively, if you put a whole bunch of crabs in a bucket, right? A crab is like theoretically like feasible and capable of climbing up out of the bucket on its own, but they rarely ever do. And the reason for that is because as soon as a crab starts to try and climb out of the bucket, another crab's going to see it and they're going to be like, yo, he's making a ladder for me. I'm going to get on top of that crab and climb out. And then what happens as soon as that happens, what he does is he pulls the other guy down back into the bucket, and nobody ever gets out, right? Sometimes it's easy for us to, tell people about what we're doing. And if we tell them in a way that's a little bit off-putting, a little bit, it hasn't quite landed, and can sort of make it seem like, we're posturing something that we're not, it can trigger that crab in a bucket reflex. Now, I also want to be really careful in saying that, I don't want to put the onus exclusively on you guys for other people's behavior like that.
Sometimes you can do the absolute best job you possibly can to to share your passion with people, to share what you're doing, to share your excitement, and people will still see that as an offense, or as you think that you're above them or something like that. And just like with rejection from customers, it takes practice, but you have to let it roll off you.
That's right. At the same time, whilst we don't want to be victim blaming, we also want to acknowledge that there are certain things that we can do from our perspective to, if nothing else, just communicate a little bit more clearly as to not trigger that mentality in the first place.
The really important mindset that you can have, and it sort of relates into the second part of the slide, which is knowing other small businesses, is that we're all here together, right? We lift each other up. And if that's the mindset that you come at it, people will respond to that. So it's really important that businesses, especially that sort of relate to you, and on a personal level. So that way, for example, because we do car detailing, sometimes we might see a dent in a car, and then we can say, oh, I noticed that you have a dent in your car. I know this guy Aaron at the local panel beaters. He does a great job if you want to go to him. And then if Aaron is fixing someone's car, he'll remember that you referred him, and then he can refer it to you, because that mindset, of we lift each other up, we're not competing. Small businesses, we're in this together. We're all trying to do our best.
That's right. The other thing that we want to remember is even just starting with our own immediate local network first, right? Even before we branch out to collaborating and establishing relationships with other businesses. Remember your friends, your family, your church and community contacts, former coworkers, neighbors, parents from school groups, right? All of us already know plenty of people. We want to make sure that those people know what we do and are excited enough about what we do that they can actually help us attract those clients in the first place. Or maybe some of them will be clients in and of themselves, right? We never know. It's something that's really, really important. Later on, when you have sort of not so much exhausted that initial network, because you never want to let that go. That's always going to be a really important part of what you do is the people that you know. But you can then end up expanding that the longer you're in business. And so, like Abigail said, small businesses actually grow through trust networks. And those small businesses can share trust. So it's really important that the other businesses in our area, even if they do something similar to what we do or even the same, that we don't always just think of them as competitors or people to beat. In fact, we want them to be collaborators. There's been plenty of instances in our detailing journey, for example, where, if there's a particular client that we either can't take on due to scheduling concerns, or they're just not quite the right fit, or whatever the case might be, we can refer them on to another business if it's more appropriate for that particular client, and that's a good thing for everybody.
And the ironic thing, and we'll talk about this a bit more later, if a customer comes to you and you can't help them, maybe it's not a good time, maybe it's just not exactly what you do, and then you refer them on to someone else, that person actually trusts you now because they came to you for help and you helped them without taking any money from them. And now they know that you are a reliable and trustworthy person. And so that can actually end up being good for you, even when they end up not being your customer, because they might come back to you next time when it does fit in your schedule, or they might just refer you to someone because they know that you're trustworthy.
It all builds into that reputation currency that we've been trying to talk about. So I'll give you guys some little examples to give you an idea, right? Let's say you do a cleaning service. You want to know a property manager, right? And vice versa. You can recommend each other because you're like peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and jam for, Kiwis. Or, if for us, we're detailers, so we want to know panel beaters, or leather repair people, that kind of thing. A gardener will probably want to be friends with a real estate agent. a photographer probably wants to be good friends with a wedding vendor, right? You want to think about ways that you can cooperate with people that run adjacent service to your business so that you can refer clients to one another as well. So let's talk about reputation. We're going to have another quick look at something we looked at in the first session, which is the sales funnel. So if we have a look here, this is the sales funnel that we talked a little bit about in that first session. So one thing that I want to focus on today is actually the first part, the widest part of the funnel, which is just the awareness. How does that play into our reputation? So honesty and reputation, as we talked about earlier, it matters enormously. And so some of the things that we've talked about, and I want to focus on again, is we don't want to overpromise. The second we overpromise, we're always going to set ourselves up to fail. It's a natural tendency to want to tell people that, we can deliver the world for them. Sometimes to try and like close a deal or just to try and get somebody more interested in what we do. But the reality is if any time we're promising more than we can feasibly deliver, we're always going to set that client up for disappointment. So we want to make sure that we do the opposite to protect our reputation. We want to underpromise and then over-deliver. We also want to communicate clearly, like we spoke about in the first session. If we waste our customers' time, if we are not respectful of their mental bandwidth, if we send them like huge, texts and try and just draw too much information out of them, it's going to tire them out. You're going to get known as hard to deal with. This is a lesson I learned the hard way.
I think it also shows sort of insecurity on your part in your own business when you're, trying to, I guess, convince the customer that you're good for them as you're speaking to them. It actually does the opposite because they think, why are you trying to convince me so hard? Whereas if you are secure in yourself and you know what you're selling is good and you just communicate only what needs to be communicated and no more than that, then they think, man, this guy really knows what he's doing. He's really efficient, really professional, and it works out much better for you.
Honestly, a little bit funny, but if we use like dating as an analogy, right? Like think about how easy it is to give a woman the ick if you like talk about, all of the reasons that you're such a nice guy and you're such a good guy, and like it's honestly it's a similar thing when it comes to getting clients, right? It's a period of courtship. Okay, so like unironically, we want to use a very similar principle, just in the same way that it can be really off-putting in a dating context to like just kind of spill your guts out and give somebody a resume as to like why you're the right choice for them. The same is actually kind of true for your business. So even if you want to think of it that way, yeah, that's it. Don't give potential clients the ick. That's right. Yeah. Another really important aspect of that is we want to admit our mistakes quickly. So another thing that I really want to acknowledge is that whenever we're trading and whenever we're in business, things are going to go wrong, right? I would be a liar if I told you guys that I've never made a mistake in my business. My God, who knows how many I've made.
I made one yesterday.
One yesterday. Yeah, I don't even remember. That was me. That was you. True. We want to front up to those as soon as possible. The very last thing you want to do. I'll give you guys an example from a detailing context. I've worked with students in the past who have like broken something on a customer's car, or they've used the wrong chemical on a particular type of surface or finish and they've damaged it. And they want to like try and cover it up or hide it or just not tell the customer and hope they don't notice or just try and blame someone else or something. I was like that already. That's a fool's errand. You want to get ahead of your mistake as quickly as possible, own up to it. And look, accept that mistakes will happen and they are part of the natural cost of doing business. This is part of the reason why, like we spoke about last time, we want to price our service so that we have some wiggle room. That wiggle room is really important because part of what that wiggle room is paying for, and yes, you will be able to get a recording, by the way. Part of what that wiggle room is paying for is for when mistakes get made and we have to, use some of the money we've made to rectify things if need be, right? This is super important. The other thing too is if you get ahead of your mistakes quickly enough, particularly if you're dealing with clients that are already patient and like you, they'll probably just let it slide. Not saying that happens every time. And in fact, another really important thing we want to do for honesty and reputation is even if a client lets it slide, we want to make sure that we actually put the client whole anyway. If you're doing this, this is like the best possible thing you can do. towards fostering your reputation.
This is also a great time to know other businesses that relate to what you're doing. So, for example, let's say you're a cleaner and you mess up a carpet. Before you call the customer, you can call someone who knows how to fix carpets and you can say, look, I made this mistake. Do you know what it would be to fix it, how it would work? And then when you call your customer, you can say, I'm really sorry about this. I used the wrong chemical on this carpet and I messed it up. But I spoke to so and so down at Carpet Repairs and they said they can fix it for this. If you let me do that, I'll get that fixed for you. I'm so sorry about this. And they really like that initiative.
That's it. And just remember that like reliability beats flashy marketing any day of the week, right?
Customers respond to your passion, to your expertise, and to, we're going to get into this, to genuinely caring about them as a person and wanting to help them. They can tell when they're being sold to. They can tell when you're being dishonest. They can tell when you're, it gives them the ick. They can feel it, right? But if you make a real effort to just care about your customer and to just want to help them, they will really respond to that. And so that's in the next part of this, people remember how businesses make them feel. And so Gabriel has here, remember names, remember preferences, to check in occasionally if it's something that you can say, hey, how's that treating you, or how, and the thing is, and thanking your customers, just genuinely, again, caring about them, ask them about their life, about their family, make conversation with them. And the other thing is this about remembering, you can totally fake that. Okay, you can go into your contact when someone texts you, maybe you have a chat with them and they say, you ask about their family and they say, oh, I've got 2 young daughters, that sort of thing. You can, when you finish talking to them, go into their contact, go into the notes and say, has 2 young daughters, likes fishing. And that way, next time you speak to that customer, you can say, hey, how are your girls? Have you gone on any fishing trips lately? They love that. They love being seen. Everyone wants to be seen.
One important qualification I do want to make to that fantastic advice, though, is do keep in mind a lot of this can often depend on the nature of your business, right? Mm-hmm. If the kind of work that you're doing involves a high volume of trading at a fairly low price, like for example, let's say you sell coffee out of the van or you run a food stall, you're probably not going to have the time to strike up a huge conversation about the life of your customer, and you're probably going to have a high number of customers where going into that level of detail isn't necessarily possible. Either way, you still want to try and just connect with people as much as possible and as much as is appropriate.
Even
right?
Just saying, hey, you're back. Great.
That's it. Yeah, just remembering people. So like Abigail said, we want to remember people's names wherever possible. We want to remember their preferences, especially if they're repeat clients. We want to understand what it is that they want. You can check in occasionally too if someone is a regular client of yours and you've got their number and you communicate by phone or by text or by email, whatever method it is. Just drop a hello to them every once in a while or something like that. Just say, for example, in a detailing context, hey, we worked on your car a few months ago. We haven't seen you since. How's it going? Are you still doing all right? Even better is if you've got a reason, you give them a reason that you're reaching out to them in the first place. I'm running a promotion at the moment. People that book in this week are going to get 20% off, something like that. Give them a reason to get excited about what you do again. And you'll find it's going to be very easy to close that client a second time. So we also, like Abigail said, want to keep contact details. Also some information about our customer. We also want to be thanking our customers. It's really easy to forget this sometimes, especially if we're doing a high volume of trading. But if we're not thanking people for the custom that they're giving us, why would they want to give it to us again? And more than anything else, we want to be reliable. So again, if you make people feel appreciated, seen, heard, and respected, they're going to remember that. And they're going to remember that it was pleasant to deal with you. And that's the main thing we want to do, is we want to be pleasant to deal with. We want to be an addition to somebody's day, not another job to do. So what's one way that we can express that, like we talked about in our first session, and be visible, that's right, is Facebook community groups. But today I want to focus a little bit more on how to actually use these sort of circles appropriately. So people buy from familiar names, and this is where being seen, particularly like in this online community context, is so important, especially because posting to these groups is always free. So first and foremost, we want to look at things like our local buy and sell groups. If you've got a product that you can, offer through those kind of buy and sell groups, great, go ahead and do so. Like we talked about in the first session, though, remember, don't get too commercial about it. That's often a downside in these groups as well, if it's even allowed in the first place. Trading under your name is always a good thing in a small and a local context. The other one that we want to look at is things like community notice boards. These are probably my favorite ones, where you can do things like talk a little bit about your story, make sure that you're, again, trading as a person, not as a brand. Another one, if it's relevant to you and what you're offering, is things like hobby and community groups where people like talk about what it is that you're doing in the first place. But another really important aspect of that is to remember we're not going to be posting spam constantly, right? We want to be present, but we also want to remember that not every interaction is an ad as such, especially in the context of contributing our expertise for free, just to even build a little bit of that visibility and knowledge around our business. We want to be genuinely helpful. We want to answer questions. We want to contribute. And that is a really good way to become recognizable and also to become trustworthy. And to make sure that when we have those interactions, we're not just always trying to force and plug our business. We do want to let people know that we have a business, that this isn't our expertise. And that helps kind of qualify the authority from which we're speaking from when we're conveying that useful information to somebody. It also has the added benefit of adding that brand awareness. But we also don't want to turn it into an ad as such, even though it low-key is. So what does coherent advertising look like? We want to keep it clear, first and foremost. So we want to answer some of those basic questions. What is it? What are you selling? Right? Who's it for? Who needs it? And then what problem does it actually solve? Like, why should someone care? We want to know what the answers to those questions are, and we want to make sure that our ad communicates that in as little words as possible. And then once we've done that, what should the person do next? You want a call to action. Should they message, call, or book? If you're running a Facebook ad, using the Facebook built-in questionnaire forms and contact forms are really powerful because Facebook does not like it when you take your client off that platform and onto a different one. You can use those integrated systems to help keep your ad effective. And also, think about it from your own perspective. If you see an ad that you like on your feed and you interact with it, and it takes you to another website where you have to like sign up first before you can even see what the offer is, I'm not interested. That's too much stuff for me to do. I've lost interest. That ad that initially piqued my interest has not respected my mental bandwidth and the stuff that I have to do in a day, and they have failed to grab me as a customer. We don't want to be doing that with our business.
And feel free to sort of experiment with your ad format. Even if you look at like our TikTok, we have like some of our older stuff is like big, flashy. You won't believe what I pulled out of this car. And other stuff is like slow motion, foam dripping off a car. And we've experimented. We've tried a bunch of different things. And I think the best way to really hone in what your advertising style is and what people respond to, because those are the two sides, is just to try things, copy what you see from other people, try different things. Don't feel like, and most people, they stay invisible because you overthink it. You sort of sit there and try and hone in, what is my advertising style going to be? What am I going to do? I would just make something and put it on your business social media and see what happens, and if that doesn't work, try something different. If that does work and you want to try something different, try it. It's most important to just have more content out there and just to be really visible than it is to have like the single perfect reel or the perfect ad on your Facebook page.
That's 100% right. Something that I want to kind of draw a little bit more detail on, just to build on top of that as well, is something we talked about in our first session, but I'm going to talk about it again because I see it come up a lot, and it really is something that sinks small home-based businesses quicker than literally anything else. And that is the fear of being perceived. Mm. I think if we are not, if we don't come from like a family or a background, of business owners, if this whole thing is a little bit new to us, if we're not used to, like being confident about shouting what we do from the rooftops, like most of us, our default state is naturally that we're going to be shy and we're going to be a little bit sometimes unwilling to tell people what we do. And if we're not doing that, then we're just not going to get clients. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work like that. If you're not already going out and telling people about what you do, then no one's going to know what you do. And I understand that fear. It does come from overthinking. It does come from that fear of judgment. There's a desire to just wait until everything's lined up and it's now perfect. But imperfect action will beat this invisible perfection every single time. A business that nobody can see can never grow in the first place.
And I want to respond to what Tiffany said here. So she said, there is so much scroll bait. I feel like the more AI and socials grow, the more real talk would be interesting. And I agree. I think if you share who you are as a person, if you share your story, if you have your background's a little messy, I think what I'm seeing is that a lot of new businesses, they do like using AI because it makes everything look picture perfect. But I don't know about you guys, but when I scroll, and I see something that's clearly AI, my eyes just completely glaze over because I don't know how much of this is actually a person, and their heart and soul and their business, and how much is just slop, right? And so yeah, just trying to be, I guess, a bit more realistic, and yeah, I think imperfection is probably going to actually become more valuable as we can make everything so perfect with AI.
Yeah, the more the internet has become like sanitized and uniform and corporate over time, the more that people like us actually have an opportunity to stand out as unique and as valuable. And yeah, just like Tiffany said, AI has made a lot of businesses unbelievable. Whereas if you're fronting up as a human being, everybody can believe that because, everybody's got an experience of that. At least I think they do. So, what are some closing thoughts about today's chat? The main thing that I wanted to communicate with you guys is that winning locally is not about being the biggest business. It's about being known, trusted, remembered, and recommended. And all that's free. All of that is based off of how we treat people, what our approach to business was in the first place, and how we continue to keep that up. What mindset are we going into this whole endeavor with? And to also remember that small, consistent actions do compound over time. Even if your videos aren't hitting huge numbers, they don't have to. Ours don't. We've never had like a million view video, and they don't need to, right? We live in a town of like less than 50,000 people. We're in the deep south. We're never going to hit like a million views. And if we did, there's not even a million people in Invercargill. So it means that maybe we took off in like Auckland or another country or something. Not that Auckland is another country, but it may as well be. No, I'm kidding. A lot of you guys are in Auckland. We love Auckland. But that's the thing is just to remember that like you don't, you're not a Fortune 500 company. You don't need to be. And it's honestly a good thing that you're not. People are kind of, they're ready for something different. And you can use that to your advantage. That's a good thing. Being small is a good thing.
Yeah, others will trust you if you trust yourself. I know it's getting a bit like, but yeah, you have to trust yourself. You have to believe in your business. You have to be passionate, and that is what people respond to. If you really, really care about the other person and you think you care about yourself and you trust yourself and you think I can help this person and they really should be getting my help, that is what people will respond to. I appreciate, so I'm just reading a message here from Renee. I appreciate what you're saying about AI. I have ADHD, and dyslexia. Copilot has enabled me and empowered me into business. It's a tool for me. Absolutely. I'm not bashing AI. I'm not saying never use AI. It's a tool for me. Otherwise, my writing is scrambled and my dialogue loses traction through no fault of my own. I use it by way of my input dumping to reach a goal and clarity output. I do think that is, it's a great tool. It's just really important to remember that people do recognize when something is too AI. So when I use AI, I often say, can you fix this up, make this a bit more clear, but don't completely rewrite it. Don't make it sound like someone else. I want it to sound like me. And then I'll read it and I'll go in and change things when I don't like the way it sounds, just to try and make sure that it still sounds like me. It's really important that I've seen, you're on Facebook and someone puts in like a 5-paragraph comment and you start reading it and you can immediately tell that it's AI. That's very off-putting.
Yeah, and the other thing that I want to talk to you about that as well is I really appreciate what you brought up there, Renee, because AI can be a very useful accessibility tool. And look, I use it a lot.
Yeah.
One of the ways that has kind of helped me learn a lot of the skills that I need to help my business grow, particularly learning those skills quickly, is using AI to do things like help me summarize and digest information of like long articles that I otherwise am going to have a difficult time sitting through. And then keeping in mind what the natural weakness of the AI is going to be. In terms of adjusting and tailoring that output so that people do know that they're dealing with a human being, the biggest recommendation that I would have for you in that front is to learn to identify what the writing patterns of AI are. There's a fantastic Wikipedia article. I think it's titled like AI or like Telltale AI markers or something like that. Abigail's just going to have a look at it in a second. But that article is fantastic. Like it's the one that a lot of people are already familiar with is like the M dash, which makes me sad because I've always been an M dash enjoyer. But these days you can't really use an M dash without being accused of like, oh, this is AI. But funnily enough, the M dash, like it's not actually the biggest thing. Although if you want a simple one, even just replacing that friggin' M dash with a comma is going to help a lot. But there's other things that AI loves to do. Particularly, it loves rule of three. So like just stating things like, uh, like it loves to make like little three dot
it is
bullet.
Efficient, expertise, and passionate, and then
Yeah.
or it's not just this, it's that.
Yeah, the comparison, that's probably the biggest one that I see anywhere. Like when AI loves to talk about like it's not just X, it's Y. If I see that, I'm like, this is AI slop. I don't want to read this. This is not respecting my time. Or another one is how it loves to add like flourishing words. Like, what are some examples? Like, that's the reason that this is really shifting the landscape, or it really, emphasizes the importance and the clarity and meaning. Like, it just adds a bunch of words like that. Take those away. Like if the AI output, if you can pick up on it, right? If it sounds like AI, you can fix it so that it sounds like a human being has communicated what you're trying to communicate. Because ultimately it is, right? They are your words. Even if you've used, something like Copilot to give a flow pass, great. Just make sure that, you can trim some of the fat off that it will naturally kind of put on there, right? But great contribution.
And
Thank you for that.
and trust your gut. So sometimes you'll write something and you'll like the way that it sounds, and AI will change it, and you'll think, oh, I guess this does sound a bit more professional. This does make more sense. Change it back. Like, again, that imperfection is part of what makes you a human being, right? So keep it, when you can. But which is not to say that, I mean, obviously, as Gabriel said, as an accessibility tool, I do think it is really important, and I'm not telling you to, to take it away entirely or to ignore it. I'm just saying that when you feel that something looks or sounds better written your way than AI, choose yours.
That's it. Also, quick recommendation there. Grammarly is far less aggressive than putting something through GPT. Sometimes it's not corrective enough, like it's not going to restructure writing for you, but that can be another avenue to think about, is using something that's less transformative and invasive in that regard. So
I do have the article. I just don't know an easy way to put it in.
All good. Actually, what I'll do now is I'll drop, Signs of AI Writing. That's the name of the article. So I'll just quickly drop that in chat for you guys. Signs of AI Writing.
By Wikipedia.
Cool. And I see we've got a reply from you there, Renee. Thank you too, because I needed this today, as well as perfect. I agree, because yes, it's AI scripting, it's Telltale, and I agree about the authenticity loss. I agree with you there. Thank you for your support and input on this subject. Greatly appreciate it. Our pleasure.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, and that brings us to our last slide. Thank you. We wanted to thank all of you guys for being with us these past sessions. We've really appreciated the time that you've given us. Don't worry, we're not bringing this to a close yet. We're gonna have time for questions. But before we broke into that, I really did want to thank all of you guys for showing up, for listening to what we have to say, for taking things away and hopefully implementing them if they're going to be useful to you.
And thank you to the generator for giving us this opportunity and giving us the opportunity to start a business in the first place. We wouldn't have done it without you. But yeah, I will. Please send through your questions, or turn on your mic and your microphone and ask.
A quick little thing too, just to put into practice some of what we talked about. You know how we talked about the importance of asking for reviews? We need your review, guys. So, but genuinely, I think at some point after this, the generator will send you guys some feedback forms, where you can talk about, how useful, these lessons were to you. If there's anything that was missing, especially, like, please let us know. Things that worked, things that were really good. Any feedback that you have for us is super valuable, because that always helps us improve, and it helps us do better. It helps give us like what has been the real world impact of what it is that we've done. So,
Paulo asked a good question. Yeah, the generator is going to send out, we'll speak to the generator to make sure they've got the right place. They're going to send out recordings of all of this to answer the other questions. So there will be recordings available of all three of our sessions, and a feedback form. And I think, should we put our Google business on?
Oh no, that's not it. No, that'll be a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is good.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No,
So that's it. Yeah. So they'll have recordings and they'll have a feedback form. So please fill out the feedback. We would really appreciate that.
Yeah. So just when you get that email, you'll find it on there. And if you have any difficulty with that, just feel free to message the generator, and I'm sure they can help you out. So let's hear it from you guys. We would love to hear your questions. Obviously, I know that was a pretty dense presentation. We saved the biggest content for the last one.
We knew it was being recorded, so I figured better dense, and you can listen to it again than to. You absolutely can follow us. We are. I'll put actually, Gabriel, you've got the keyboard. We're in Invercargill Automotive Detail.
Yeah, I'll
We're mostly on TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok's our main one. I'll go ahead and I'll drop that in chat just in case you guys are interested.
You might want to share.
Yeah. Hold on, so on TikTok, we're at Invercargill Detailing. And if you look us up on Facebook, we are called Invercargill Automotive Detailing. Oh, so yeah, if you want to, yeah, go ahead. That'd be awesome. Thanks very much, Renee. Really appreciate your feedback. That's wonderful. So now that we've, all thanked each other, I still really want to hear, and I do appreciate you guys, but I would love to hear some questions from you guys, because you guys have always asked fantastic questions throughout all of these. So please, by all means, I would love to hear something in the chat from you guys, even if it's just a reflection or a thought or a comment. We're ready to hear from you. So I'm gonna zip up until I read a question.
Would you still do flyers or just social media? It depends on the business, but probably social media. That's the long and short of it. There are some businesses, I think, where flyers could be helpful, but everything happens online these days.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, like, just think about from your own perspective, like, what was the last time that you personally solicited a service from like a flyer in your letterbox? I can tell you how many I've thrown away, but I can't tell you like really a single time. I think maybe like once in several years, I had like a Chinese takeaway menu like in there, and then I was like, this particular day, but even then, it's one of those things that you end up spending so much money, like, and time getting them out there for such minimal return. It's not just like social specifically, like there are different types of AdWords strategy, probably a little bit more than we can go into huge detail today. But the main thing I want to convey is, if you are going to like dedicate money toward advertising, then doing things like putting together, some good ad copy and boosting that on Facebook. Depends what your service is. So for example, like car detailing, a lead is worth minimum 300 for us on average. So it makes sense for us to do something like have a $20 a day ad spend to generate, 13 leads a day. And we hope to close like, 3 or 5, things like that are going to be generally more effective. It just depends on your business.
And I think the other thing, a lot of people, this is with Gabriel's coaching, have said that if they make some social media posts and then they don't do well, so they think, oh, I should spend money and that will make it do well. But the thing is, it's much better to try and get that free content out there, and to really, that way you get better at your editing, you get better at presenting yourself, and you can hopefully get some leads from that. And then once you've really sort of gotten the handle on it, and you're also getting, I guess, a steady stream of leads from your free content, but you think, oh, I'd like a bit more, then I think you should consider spending money on it. But the money does not get the customers, it's the content.
The other thing too that I want to be super clear on is there's going to be a huge difference between the content that you put out to build awareness and particularly to establish a parasocial relationship, there's a massive difference between that and what you put out in terms of a paid advert to generate leads. Those are two fundamentally different things. One of them is very clearly an ad with ad copy, and you do want to follow like a good ad copy formula, like we talked about earlier in the presentation.
Steps,
yeah. We'll just roll back to that. That is like literally clearly an ad, and you want to make it a good one as an ad. What you don't want to do, because I've seen sometimes people make this mistake, is they'll use like the paid advertising mechanism to just like boost their posts, and that's a great way to get more views, not necessarily a great way to get more customers. And also, when people get pushed like content in advertising form, they're going to want to skip it, because like it's like when you find content that you're going to watch, it's going to be organically. Nobody wants to sit down and watch an ad unless it's for something they're already looking for, right? That's why when you're paying to advertise, you want to make it an ad, because if someone's actually interested in what you do, they're going to stop and watch the ad. If they're not, they're going to skip it, right? That's why it's not really generally a good idea to like just use like paid boosting either on TikTok or on Facebook to like boost your existing kind of like content platform thing. Those are actually two separate things. We want to just make sure that we get that distinction right. But great question. Thank you for that.
This next one's are weird.
This one we haven't answered that
one.
Oh,
I missed it.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Our biggest challenge.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. That's an awesome question. So what was our biggest challenge or turning point?
I think for us, the reason we started the business, I guess, was in response to our biggest challenge, which is just trying to find a way to earn an income that works with with Gabriel's disability. He's got post-viral fatigue or long COVID. And also we've got 2 young kids. And so, it's a business that, we can do from home. We can do during the kids' naps. We can, take it at a very slow pace, to work with health issues. I think for us, our business was sort of started in response to our biggest challenge. Yeah.
And I would say the turning point from that was definitely the generator. So, great that you guys are here.
Good start,
in the generator context. Yeah, that's right. Because, it's easy to have ideas, but ultimately, you get 1 point for the plan and 9 points for the execution.
And even then the plan, like everything that they had us do, with the guideline for making the website and the accounting was just fantastic.
Yeah, take the advice and the feedback you get from the generator seriously. Like, no matter how good your idea is, if it's not actually viable and functional as a business idea, it's not going to work. And the generator helps you vet that.
And ongoing support, it's not all over when you finish here. I mean, obviously there are these classes, but we've had a few times where we have issues, with MSD or with our business or something. And we call, and Therese or June, they give us great advice, or we speak to Vicky, the accountant. I think they've got a few accountants. They're so supportive. They're always in your corner and they have great advice. So please
use those resources.
It's a great resource, right?
Cool. So next question here, Tiffany, when collaborating or partnering with other businesses, what would you offer? Is it just cross promotion, or are there other options, say service-based? Okay, this is a really fun question. I'll kind of answer it in 2 parts. So one of them is, how do I put it? When you talk about like service-based, I don't know if this is exactly what you meant, but I'll talk about this anyway, because I think it's cool. You don't always necessarily have to trade in cash. Right? So like if you know and are friends with other people that like, particularly if they own, especially home-based businesses, right? And you don't want to make an accounting mess for one another. Sometimes you can trade your services for one another and like build relationships that way.
We had that happen with, there's a friend of ours runs a computer business. And so he fixed the computers of someone who he knows who runs a burger business. So he gave burger vouchers. But then we detailed the computer guy's car. So the computer guy got his car detailed. The burger guy got his, computer built, and we got burger vouchers. It was a great system. Build those networks and trade services. It's great. Yeah.
That's it. And the other nice thing about doing like little things like that is like, There's not really any tax involved for anybody because no money's really changing hands, right? You're just kind of doing stuff, doing favors for one another. Yeah, yeah,
And it
keeping
builds
it.
builds relationships.
It
Yeah.
does. It really does.
But
Yeah, cross promotion is a really good one, but I love what you've said. Yeah, like trade, sometimes even just trading services with one another and doing little deals like that for one another is it's great. It's good fun.
and just getting to know them and speaking to the owners and forming like a collegial like a
Yeah.
like your colleagues kind of relationship. And yeah, you don't have to exchange money. You could just refer people to them if they're the better service, and they'll refer people to you.
That's it. Now, Peter, we see you've said how to advertise to high-end customers who may be able to connect your business to their pool of contacts and raise your profile. Great question. So we talked a little bit about this in our second presentation, but I'll give you some of that detail now. More than anything else, it's honestly its price point, and then we want to make sure that we have the quality to match that price point. If you make the very common mistake, a lot of people make this mistake of like, oh, I'm going to start low. And then once I like build up my quality or reputation or something, then I'm going to price high. You're kind of like shooting yourself in the foot in the sense that you're going to be like climbing an uphill battle to try and like build a completely new customer base. Because the reality is, like we talked about before, if you're just starting off with those very value and budget conscious customers from the outset, they're not going to follow you once your prices have increased substantially to the point where they should have been in the first place. In fact, like we talked about last time, it's always going to be easier to like build a high margin, low volume business first that can then give you the means and the liquidity to scale over time to the point where you then can compete in the economy space that has much tighter margins and requires a much higher volume of scale, and that functions off a larger economy of scale. So long story short, like price high and then treat people with respect and know like how to connect with your clients in the first place. So it's the thing that we talked about today effectively. Like if you can foster and build that relationship well, you're going to get that kind of like natural referral as is. You're trading on your personality, not a brand. You are the brand.
And I think knowing that you're a luxury product, your business is a luxury item, because you're never going to be the cheapest, right? So try and have something that makes it just a little extra special, that really makes someone feel like they're getting the white glove service, they're getting the ideal thing. And do your social media and your advertising that way. One of the things that has helped us get higher value clients, I think, is that our social media makes it very clear that we are super detail oriented. We really go into the nooks and crannies of the car. We use all these big like foam covering everything. It just looks really high value. And then when we have a customer, we put like a steering wheel cover on and a little disposable mat, like it just, when a customer gets into that car, it just feels premium. It feels like a luxury product. And then you'll attract customers who are looking for luxury rather than ones who are looking for the best price. And again, when someone does reach out, make sure to just keep it, professional. Don't try and give them the ick. Don't try and, I guess, oversell yourself, because then they'll think that they'll think you doubt yourself, so it shows that you really think you're worth that high price.
That's it. Great question, Peter. So Meliana, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if I'm not. So Meliana has asked, what about the cleaning services, please? I use Facebook only. I try my best to be more on social media like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. So I think, are you asking about
where best to be?
Yeah, where best to be if you've got a cleaning service business? I would say probably the first platform that comes to mind really is Facebook. Community notice board, probably like even mom groups and stuff like that.
Instagram is good for women advertising as well. So
yeah. It's not so much about, in some sense, the choice of platform as much as it is like making sure that you're reaching the people you want to be reaching. So you want to be very deliberate about who your content is for and making sure that it's not only designed for that audience, but that you're meeting them where they're at. And that's where the Facebook groups are really helpful and really useful. So just have a think about where the kinds of clients you're looking for are going to be hanging out in terms of those Facebook groups, and then meeting them there. The other thing too that you want to keep in mind though is, particularly with cleaning, it's in some sense going to be more useful for you to try and trade on word of mouth as much as possible, in some sense, rather than online. The reason for this is because like if you're doing like say for example household cleaning services, um, I hate to say it, but you're kind of fighting a little bit of an uphill battle that like for example, and honestly, part of me, I sometimes speculate how much misogyny unironically has to do with it. But like sometimes like household cleaners get traded as like more of a commodity than people who clean cars, which is not a good thing. I think partly because people think of household cleaning as something like anybody can do, whereas they don't sometimes afford the same to cars. And so what I'm trying to communicate is that if you just try sometimes on specifically on socials, particularly if you're reaching out to people that are very price conscious and very price sensitive, they're going to compare you to like what their wage is at work. Or like my cousin did it for cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. And that can sometimes be demotivating. That's not to say that you can't like publish a successful cleaning business and advertise it on social platforms, but that you may want to just focus specifically on the luxury aspect of what you do.
And the relationship,
And the relationship,
being
yeah.
really personable and really just enjoyable to interact with. That will go really far. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. And be confident. But yeah, like I feel for you because I've experimented with stuff like that in the past. It can be a little more difficult. It's not impossible, but there's actually a recommendation that I've got for you. There's like this Portuguese guy in Melbourne who has like a cleaning service where he talks about detailing houses. And that's actually what he's done is he's shifted his business perception from like household cleaning into like house detailing. And he's able to, here we go. I'll just pull up the name. Here we go. So it's called Edge Cleaning WA. So I'm just going to drop that in the chat. The handle is
Okay,
at
respond to that.
Edge Cleaning. Yeah, I'll respond to your message with it.
While you're doing that, I'll read out this message from Joseph. Thanks for the tips, are very informative, but I'm not keen on faking my relationship with a customer to get them to come back. I know business is a very hard place to be, but I'd rather be natural, and if I'm serving people, be from the heart, someone who cares about people. That's stronger than faking. If the intent is faking it, it's not the way I do things. I'm very good at reading fake people, and I have found people trying to sell me things and asking things I said before, but somehow it felt performative. Yeah, I agree with you. To be clear, when I said faking it, I meant memory. And this is quite funny that you would say, so the thing I talked about with the contact details or saving people's names and faces and details, I actually do that for my friends and my acquaintances as well because my memory is really poor. So like I have a note on my app where like I buy yarn in my local wool shop. I actually have a note that's like lady at wool shop name Mary or lady at this name this because I'm just bad with names. But and it's because I respect and because I value people and I want them to, because I like people, I guess I want to be able to remember their names. And so that's how I do it because I don't have it up here. So I gotta have it in here, like yeah, so when I said faking it, I was more referring to the memory aspect of things. But you are right that if you're faking it when it comes to the relationship with the person and when it comes to actually caring about the person, yeah, people can tell that it's not a good way to do things. I think just I don't know, search your heart and find a love for people. You like if you see yourself that way, that we're all raising each other up, that we're all helping each other, that's what people feel.
The other thing too, though, that because there's a couple things there that I also want to address that I think are really important. So yeah, one is yeah, we apologize if they use the word faking kind of confused. We're talking about like faking your memory skill. You don't want to like fake a connection with somebody. That's obviously not a sustainable way to build. Like the whole point of this is to try and build those real human connections. The other thing that I do want to talk about, though, specifically when it comes to the notion of things being like performative, um, I do want to draw an important distinction that like all social interaction is on some level a performance, right? Like even us talking to you guys right now, this is not the way that I'm going to communicate with my mom when I go see her at lunch today. So like there is an aspect of that which is inherently a performance. The reason I want to talk about that is because that's not necessarily a bad thing. We've talked about in a couple lessons like the importance of code switching, right? Now sometimes people can like have the perception of code switching, like altering your like word choice and stuff like that, as like presenting some fake version of yourself. I don't actually think that's a helpful way of looking at it because the reality is like we all do it, right? I'm going to speak differently, to my priest than to the guy I went to school with, right? I'm going to speak differently, to my grandma to the way that I speak to my wife. sometimes literally even a different language. You know what I mean? Like Spanish is my first language. So like in that sense, the only thing that I want to just, give a little bit of an alternative perspective to in what you've written is, and I really appreciate your comment. I think it's a great comment. But just specifically the performative aspect, like we don't necessarily always have to see that as a bad thing. Like just because we're communicating with someone in a way that is not like our most natural state when we're on our own. I sometimes question the very concept of like what, like our
Who's the real self?
yeah, who's the real self,
yeah.
right? Because like, I think at the end of the day, the perception we give of others about ourselves and who we are, is who we are to that person.
When we are in a professional role, when we're being a professional, we're going to speak professionally. We're going to put on our professional hat. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I'm not going to speak to her with my professional hat on. You know, when she's having a tantrum, I'm not going to say, okay, it doesn't seem like you're happy with the service today. Is there anything I can do to help? And that's not because, professional me isn't the real me, or mom me isn't the real me. It's just, it's just about, I guess, putting your best foot forward, and that's going to look a little different depending on who you're talking to. And and the thing is, often also that doesn't come naturally to us, and we do have to. It's even in dating, as Gabriel said, sometimes you have to seem confident, and then eventually you'll actually grow that confidence within yourself. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, thank you so much for putting that forward. So Tiffany has asked, what was the hardest part of building this and getting repeat customers? Okay, great question. I think in many ways, like the first part was getting over the fear of being perceived. Like I've spoken to a lot of people that like, they're like, oh, I want to do this and I want to have the business, but like I really don't want like a whole bunch of randoms knowing who I am. I'm sorry, but that's the nature of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And look, I don't want to, for any of you here today that may be experiencing and feeling like that shyness or that anxiety, I do want to honor that. I don't want to disrespect that. That is a huge hurdle to climb. It is also the most important hurdle to climb.
It's also often learned because of bad experiences we've had in the past from being seen. And you'll probably have some bad experiences and some rejections when you put yourself back out there again with your business. And yeah, you just have to, I guess, learn not to let it affect you, and to grow that, that's that inner self that can take it, basically.
That's it. And then in terms of the getting repeat customers part, I would say probably the most challenging aspect of that is if you don't already have a system of keeping track of who your clients are, is actually getting around to making one, right? Is it if you don't have that, if you don't do that, then
Just
movement.
anything. We had that this calendar here was our system for a while, where we would just write the customer, or saving it in their contacts. It doesn't have to be anything super crazy and involved, but it's just some way. Yeah.
Now I will use this as an opportunity to say, if you are already at the point where you are dealing with a high volume of leads, if you're already doing paid advertising and say you're processing about like 20 leads a day on average at least, not necessarily 20 paying customers, but even just 20 prospective leads that you're going to have to, if you're already trading at that volume, then yeah, it's probably time to upgrade from the notebook. Okay. If you're not at that volume, even just your notebook or some kind of mental system is fine when you're starting out. But at a certain point, you are going to really want to look at establishing and implementing what's called a CRM, a customer relationship management system. That can be things like Jobber. That can be things like Go High Level is a really good one. There's lots of different like options out there. I'm not sure if any of us here are already like kind of at that stage. If you are, feel free to drop in the chat and I can elaborate on that. But I did want to mention that even if it's just something to keep in mind in the future, there does come a point where you do outgrow the notebook, and it is going to make sense to have a more automated and a more like comprehensive system. So Paulo has asked, my tiny business is focused on encouraging the slow fashion, trying to create conscious about the demerits of the fast fashion. So I added an app to make an offer on my website to keep clothes in circulation. Do you think it is not a good idea? Maybe it could lower the perceived value. Okay. This is a great question. First of all, thank you so much for like having the bravery to put this forward and to put yourself out there. Well done. Like, honestly, that's what we want to see. Okay. So I'll give you my very quick feedback now. Okay. The main piece of feedback I would have for you here is I'm still not like just after reading it the first time. And look, this could be an issue on my end, right? It is also the case that like my perception is my reality. So again, I'm not trying to put everything 100% on you. I can also take some responsibility for this. But I'll tell you off the bat that after my first like reading of what your business is, I don't really get it. Now that very well could be a deficiency on my end, but the reason I just want to like respectfully put that back to you. Look, I'm not saying that there's anything inherently wrong with your business, but like if it's a little bit hard to like communicate. Like I can't tell like
is it takes a while, especially because it sounds like you're doing something. I mean, we always say that our elevator pitch is we clean cars, and I think what you're doing, it sounds more complicated than that. And it's not going to be summarized as easily, but you do need to be able to, in a sentence, describe what you do, and it can take quite a while to craft that sentence if you're doing something a little bit more complex.
So for example, like say if here's what I did so much like so far understand from what you've put forward is like there's a concept there around, obviously the fast fashion industry, very wasteful, seasonal outfits, a lot of things up in landfill, they're not made to last, right? So you want people to focus on keeping garments for longer. I think that's a great idea. In terms of, well, then what actually is like your service? Is it an app? Is it like secondhand clothing sales? Is it like recycling? Um, it's not super clear to me at the moment. So I would say if there's one bit of feedback that I would have for you just now is to take that's a great concept. I love the idea of, like getting people to focus on keeping their garments for longer as opposed to just cycling through fast fashion all the time. In terms of how that translates into what you actually do, I would recommend that you maybe just work on your elevator pitch a little bit. Kind of like if you were at our second session, or if you missed it, that's fine. I highly encourage you to watch that recording, and then look at ways to kind of just make it a little bit more. I would say that's probably much more of a priority for you at this stage than the idea of like slow or keeping garments for longer, lowering perceived value. One thing I will quickly tell you on that note, I don't think that's going to be a concern for you, because like what you often see, like literally like the King of England has like very old suits with like visible patchwork on it, right?
It's funny actually here where we live, there's a Salvation Army next to something called like a secondhand boutique.
Mhm.
And so in both places they sell secondhand clothing. And in one place you can pay, $2 for a shirt. And in another place, I'm not even joking, 200. I it's not the kind of place I shop, but clearly there's a market for it, right?
Yeah.
Clearly it does matter to people. So I don't think that necessarily would lower perceived value if you have your marketing right.
That's it. Yeah. But definitely dial in that marketing. I think that's the main thing you could do at the moment. All right. So Joseph, we got some other feedback. Thanks for clarifying the faking term. And hey, I'm not judging. I'm just being honest. No, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate your help. No, dude, all good. We appreciate you, man. I disagree. I will say it's just been who you are in different colors of your persona. If I don't like a customer, I will stay professional. I mean, look, you do you, man. Like that's the, however you want to, like, we're not here to, I'm not going to tell any of you guys how to run your business. I'm just here to tell you, like, what are some of the things that, have worked for us and that we've picked up along the way. And if you want to do something differently, like, great. If it works, it works, right? Like
there's even some Gabriel students who have, I don't want to get too technical into it, but there's one guy who does his service in such a weird way to Gabriel that he's basically said, don't do it this way. But it works for him.
He made it work.
Yeah, he's getting customers, and that's the ultimate measure, right? So yeah, just keep.
That's it. Yeah, if it's making money, people are happy, everything's ethical, then yeah, send it. Tiffany says, "Oh, the fear of being perceived. I'm putting this on my wall. Thank you." Yeah. By all means, like, look, I get it. Like, a lot of it, not to get like too Freudian or anything here, but I think a lot of it even goes back to childhood. Like, I remember, when I was a kid, like if I was like, doing homework in the kitchen table and my mom saw me doing it, it just gave me the worst feeling ever, and I didn't want to do it.
Even though she was happy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Like, we probably also need to sign off because we're 15 minutes past. I've thank you to all of you, and Tiffany, I'm happy that you've got a few pages of notes. That makes me feel really good. Thank you so much for joining us for these 3 sessions. We've really enjoyed it. And thank you again to the generator for the opportunity.
And again, please fill out your feedback forms when you get them. Thank you guys so much. Okay. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Cheers. Oh, God bless you too. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Right?
Cool.
Cool.